Continuing our Mothers series, I am joined here with Krista and her husband, Christian, talking about her battle with postpartum depression. Thank you for being here. I know this is a really difficult subject to talk about, but can you just share bits of your story just about what you've gone through?
Sure. Well, first, thanks for having us here. Postpartum depression is very near and dear to our heart because it was something that's greatly impacted our family. My journey into motherhood started rocky. Our first son was born 10 weeks premature and very, very sick, and we knew that he wouldn't survive. And so I struggled with postpartum. Well, I should say I struggled with post-traumatic stress disorder. I was never actually diagnosed, and actually when I was sort of recounting my story, I don't think that ever came up as a conversation about postpartum depression or anxiety. And so now looking back, I find that a bit odd. And I went through the process like anyone would expect with losing Aiden. And then we decided to continue our family. We sort of shared that we had some concerns just with a previous loss and maybe even just being older parents, but nobody seemed concerned, and so we sort of progressed as we enjoyed our pregnancy for the most part. I think the first time, now when we look back, I can sort of see that, there was a little bit of concern when we learned that Elliot might have, I can't even think, sorry, I'm blanking. Down syndrome, when they thought that maybe he might have Down syndrome. That sort of, I think, set in that first anxiety. And I think more of that was just more how we learned about it coming back from holidays and having phone messages saying like, it's urgent, please call the doctor's office and book an appointment. And so I think that's when we first started to, or at least I started to notice that maybe things weren't as smooth as I had hoped that they would be, but having Elliot was exciting, but right away I experienced pretty extreme postpartum depression. More of it was more anxiety. I think my depression came in later on. I think, I don't know, would you say that sounds right? It was probably more my anxiety that really had me going. I would worry about just like the littlest things, like if he was crying, I didn't know what to do, and he wasn't sleeping and I wasn't sleeping, and so I spent a lot of our early days struggling with lack of sleep, not eating properly, living on caffeine, so I'm sure lots of moms can relate to that. So it becomes that vicious cycle, right? You're not eating properly, you're not sleeping properly, and so and then you've got all these hormones that you're dealing with, and so for our family, there wasn't any supports here in Lloydminster, and so it wasn't until Elliot was about 14 months in which that my husband would drive me to Saskatoon to go to a support group there, and that was probably, it was the hardest thing to do. One, we had to leave our baby behind, and then I had to go and sit in a room with all these people that I didn't know, and the first meeting I just cried. The entire time I just cried, and but we went back and my husband took me, so 3 hours there and 3 hours back, and so it was a big commitment for our family to give that up, and I'm so grateful for the supports that we had to trust people with Elliot. Christian's mom and dad are really close, so it was nice to know that grandma and grandpa were looking after him while we were getting the support that we needed. Is there anything else? I think for our family, we struggled, a lot. And I think in the beginning we asked questions and we were curious, and I would say to moms and even to dads, or even to maybe it's a grandma or an auntie or an uncle, if you're concerned about somebody, talk to them and really lean in and have that conversation with them. Yeah. I feel like we would say to people that we weren't doing well, and lots of times people would say, oh, well, being sleepless, that's just part of motherhood. And we had a baby that the only time he would sleep was in a moving vehicle or if you were walking. And so the old adage of mom sleeps when baby sleeps, that's pretty hard to do if you're driving a vehicle or going out for walks. I was probably at my thinnest, but I wasn't eating well. I was living off of caffeine and I was not getting any sleep at all. I would say that I probably struggled with a bit of psychosis. I would have bits of hallucinations, but nothing, we talked about it the other day and maybe I needed to be hospitalized, but I think for moms, it's hard to say and to share those really deep, dark secrets because you don't understand them.
Yeah.
So then you worry that if you share them, that someone else might not understand them, and we judge ourselves. So I'm grateful that I was able to share everything with my husband, but I know not all families have that because it's so hard to understand because you can't see what we're going through, and so a lot of time we hide it. So.
And I guess what would you say to those moms who feel like they have no one to talk to, but they deep down they need someone to hear them? What would you say to those moms?
I would say reach out to someone that you trust and that you love, whether it's your spouse, maybe it's your mom or your sister, or a family doctor, and let them know how, don't sugarcoat it. I know it's so hard to share, but I think that they need to hear your voice and they need to know that you're struggling and that there's no shame in struggling. We've got some amazing resources here in our community. I'm so proud that Midwest Family Connections has really taken the lead, and we've got a Mother's First group that meets every Thursday. So that's for moms who are struggling with postpartum depression, or maybe you're just concerned that something doesn't feel right. For me, having that support group was my saving grace. I don't think I would be here today if it wasn't for my husband taking me to Saskatoon. Those women, it's funny because we always joke that we know some of the most intimate and darkest, deepest secrets, but for the longest time we didn't even know each other's last names.
Yeah.
So that support group saved my life, and so I'm very grateful for the fact that Midwest Family Connections hosts the Mother's First group, and so even if you can get to that group, I think that's a great start, or talking to your family physician or someone that you know that cares for you unconditionally and that's not going to judge you, then.
Okay, well, I want to say thank you so much for coming on here and talking about your story. I know it's really difficult, but I believe that it will help a lot of moms in your situation. So thank you so much for coming and sharing your story.
Yeah. And thank you for having us. It's our greatest hope that we can make a difference in our community and help other families.
Of course, yeah.